Canada moving farther away from the United States, as they should. Yes, that is what we're going to talk about today on the Mr. Global channel. Welcome back. Really appreciate all my followers and subscribers. Please like and share if you don't mind. So if you haven't heard, Canada and Alberta have reached agreed to a memorandum of understanding where they would build a new pipeline to the west for Alberta to provide Asian markets with more oil. And this is about 100%. This is about Canada being less reliant on the United States, who is supposed to be their most trusted trade partner. And with Donald Trump in office, that is no longer a thing. And so they need to make some moves. They've signed a lot of trade agreements recently with new countries trying to expand their footprint in the global marketplace, so to speak. And now we have this memorandum of understanding between Canada and Alberta. There's dozens of things that can stop this. First of all, I want to say that right up front. I think the odds of this actually coming to fruition are low. But if anything, it sends a clear message to the United States. And that is, we don't trust you. So Danielle Smith, Alberta, and Carney, the guy that runs the whole place, have come to this understanding. So the way this would work is Alberta would be responsible for one, getting the Indigenous people in Canada on board. That's going to be a huge ask. That is probably, in my opinion, the biggest roadblock. This pipeline that they want to build would go through environmentally sensitive areas in British Columbia, in addition to the fact that there's a ban on tankers off the coast of British Columbia that would have to be done away with, so to speak. Like I said, there's a lot of roadblocks here, but the idea is a new pipeline. They would have to find a company to build it. They would have to find a company to invest in it. That's a long shot. But there are some possibilities. By the time this thing got completed and done, maybe the oil markets would be turning around. We'll see. But basically the agreement is a new pipeline from Alberta to the BC coast, and in tandem, at the exact same time that is being built, one of the world's largest carbon capture systems, complexes in the world would be built to help reduce emissions of Alberta oil. And there's some other things, more power generation for data centers and things like that. But there's a couple of really big stories here. One is Canada moving farther away from the United States, especially with their oil trade. Over 95% of the oil that Canada produces goes to the United States now. That number has likely come back a little bit with the Trans Mountain Pipeline, but that's including oil, gas, petroleum products, refined, all of it. All products. So, and Canada wants to reduce and limit their exposure to the United States. Understandably so. I think the biggest part for me, I think Canadians outside of Alberta are going to be largely opposed to this. Some sentiment has been moving towards it recently, but I still think the majority of Canadians would oppose this. And if you oppose it or support it, you can feel free to say so in the comments if you're from Canada. It's your country. It's not mine. I don't want to speak for you, but this is what I'm hearing from Canadians, and it's also what has historically been the case. The biggest hangup would definitely be EB from British Columbia and the Indigenous people. They don't want any part of this. And EB's already come out and said, We don't want any part of it. We don't want any part of a co-ownership thing. And that's how they're going to try to sell this to the indigenous people, is giving them a piece of the pie. They want them to be co-owners in it. I don't feel like there's going to be much support from that from the western parts of Canada. I just don't. But here's the thing, politics in Canada is nothing like politics in the United States. So when I'm reading all of this stuff, I have to kind of filter out my brain, which is saturated with US politics, and just understand these are Canadians. These are like normal people. And they typically say what they mean. When you're researching something like this, if this was in the United States, you can't really take anything any of the politicians would say with a grain of salt. And of course, there's a lot of things you can't really take seriously from politicians in Canada. But one thing that is true, a lot more of the stuff they say, they mean. So when Eby from British Columbia says no, I believe him. I don't believe he's playing some game. I've read the entire memorandum of understanding. It's available on Canada's website. I have it pulled up on the Prime Minister of Canada's website, and I wanted to share this couple of parts with you here. I'm just going to read right off the website. Canada and Alberta remain committed to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. That's part of the construction of carbon capture alongside the pipeline, because they would increase their oil production in Alberta by 1 million barrels a day. So, and that's always going to be the first thing you hear from Canada or Alberta regarding this. Hey, we're still going after net zero. So that's always going to be the first thing you hear. Alberta and Canada will work together to achieve the shared objective of establishing Canada as a global energy superpower, unlocking the growth potential of Western Canada's oil and gas, including LNG, renewable energy, critical minerals, and other resources that the world needs. Notice they put renewable energy and critical minerals in there for a reason. This deal literally has nothing to do with renewable energy, but they're going to put it in there. You're going to have to hear it. Alberta and Canada recognize their obligations to consult with, where appropriate, accommodate Indigenous people. Yeah, I don't think that's going to fly. Canada and Alberta are committed to respecting Aboriginal and treaty rights, engaging in early, consistent, and meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples in a manner that promotes reconciliation and the respects, rights, and cultures of Indigenous peoples while advancing economic opportunities through Indigenous ownership and partnerships. Imagine reading something that well written from a U.S. government official. That's not a thing. So as I said, I think the odds of this actually happening are pretty low, but you never know. I mean, you never know what could happen, right? This is going to be a evergreen story. It's going to be evolving and changing as time goes by. I believe this memorandum, can look here. It's not on the page I have pulled up here. I believe it expires July 1st, 2026. It's either first day of July or last day of July. Oh, here it is. July 1st, 2026 is when it expires. So they have to get these deals done by July 1st, 2026. Like I said, probably a low probability of this actually coming to fruition. But as I said, you never know. It would be, if they could work it out, simply from an economic perspective. I'm not going to speak on the environmental impacts. I think we all know the environmental impacts. That's all very clear to us. We know there are absolutely environmental impacts. You can build a carbon capture system. You can build whatever. The risk is there. The risk is there for people that don't want the risk, and that's the Indigenous people. Having tankers off the coast is not something that I would that is about as low risk of a thing as you can have. Doesn't matter if they don't want them there, then they shouldn't be there. That's my opinion. If they don't want them there, they shouldn't be there. It's their land, it's their water, it's their property. And I believe in their rights. So they're going to try to sell you on a lot of things. If you're from Canada, they're going to talk about economic prosperity. They're going to talk about lower gas prices. They're going to talk about all the ways this is going to help you. I'm here to tell you it's not. It's not going to help you. It's not going to lower your gas prices. It's not going to bring economic prosperity to anyone in Canada except for the oil companies and whoever builds the pipeline. Period. We just need to get that out of the way. As an American, I understand the promises that we're often told about these things. Now, it would reduce Canada's reliance on the United States for a lot of things, for a lot of economic things, GDP, job growth, things like that, overall production. It would. That's probably the one good thing that would come out of that. If you're weighing the good versus the bad, that's the really good thing. The question is it worth it? The question is, are people in Canada, and more importantly, well, they're in Canada too, but the Indigenous people, are they willing to risk that for some economic prosperity? My sense is they're not, because they never have before. I will say this. I also believe that there could be a lot of gamesmanship. There could be some chess going on here between Carney and Danielle Smith. This could be a power move. Carney could be consolidating future votes, knowing that this whole thing is going to fail. He could be placating her. He could be pacifying her. He could be trying to win over moderates, with the full understanding this is never going to happen, right? Is he putting his base at risk? I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with Canadian politics to go too deep into it. So when I talk about Canadian politics, it's not going to be, we're not going to be getting in the weeds. It's just going to be views from an outsider who may or may not be right about those politics. Let's just be completely honest about it. But this is big news in Canada. But the overall message today is, I believe, one, this sends a huge message to the United States, and I think it's a message that needed to be sent for sure. Even though we're not listening, because Donald Trump is in the White House, that means we're not listening. People outside the White House are. People outside the White House are absolutely listening. So to me, I love that piece of it, that it sends a huge message to the United States. When you combine this with all of the other things, with all of the other trade deals that Carney's been making, it's pretty loud and clear how Canada feels about the United States. Low probability of this happening, and we'll just have to wait and see. But it's definitely interesting. We've been talking about pipeline in Canada for quite some time. And here we have an agreement. And we'll just have to see what happens. I don't myself give my support for these things. It's not my country. I don't feel it's my place to say, hey, I support this. I feel like it's my place to say, this is the good, this is the bad. And most of what I say, I think most people in Canada already know, if we're just being completely honest. I think people in Canada are well aware that they're going to be lied to about oil companies, about the positive impacts of their lives if this happens. I know it's nice to hear it from someone else, but I feel like they already know that. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Really appreciate all my new followers and subscribers. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Lots of cold weather coming in for the weekend. Be prepared. Please like and share and let me know what you guys think. Thanks.